All right, everybody, welcome to Big Book Compendium. Happy Monday, I guess we can say. So we're continuing our journey to doctor's opinion. We're going to get to I like to say the meat and potatoes of it. And before, we do that, I like, to again, talk a little bit about step one. I think it's vitally important when we're going over anything related to step one is to kind of go back and look at it. I sound like a broken record at time when I say this, but there's a lot of pages on step one, and that's our investigation we're doing. And doctor's opinion is the starting point, of that investigation. I said that step one is the only step we must do 100%, and I'm not talking about abstinence when I say that. What I'm talking about is being 100% convinced that you're powerless over alcohol, and that's why step one is the most important step. Because if you're not willing, to do anything in step one, then nothing else can happen. Nothing. And we cannot have no lurking notion that one day we can have a drink. And step one is the foundation step, and it's very important to understand the foundation step and what that means. A foundation, hold on one second, my computer's going weird. A foundation is the most essential part of any building. It's the base so which an entire building will stand on, and has many purposes. And one purpose is to hold the building together. It's the walls and the roof. It supports the weight of the building. It also anchors the building together. And a foundation is built to last forever. So it's very important to pay attention to every little detail of any foundation to ensure we want to make sure it remains intact to hold the building. And that's why any builder takes their foundation seriously. Any structure, must rest on top of a solid foundation. So with that being said, I'm going to put up a slide. Hold on one second. I got my computers all whacked out. One more time. There it goes. I think I finally got it right. I gotta close this out though. All right, I'm still doing it. Hold on. Single page. There it is. So this is we are building a structure as we go through this big book. And this is this is foundation of that structure. And that's this willingness foundation. Or I like to say, maybe keep it simple and call it readiness foundation, the ready foundation or something. Are you ready to admit you are powerless? I said before, if you're not ready to admit you're powerless, nothing else can happen. And you're either ready or you're not. And some people, it takes years and years to be ready. I mean, I said this before, I used to get frustrated when people didn't want to do their 4-step, and so I just realized they weren't ready. And sometimes we have to go through some good beatings to understand what it means. So this is the first layer of this structure, and I'm going to add to the structure as time goes by in this book, and we'll build a structure together. So I'm going to close this up. So, just a little about last week, we explained how alcoholics were in these inebriate asylums, and because alcoholics were, what were we, liars, thieves, criminals, rapists, all this stuff like that, they said. And alcoholics they were looked at as, it was only looked at as a problem of the mind. So alcoholics were looked at as mentally insane, and they were giving, electroshock therapy and worse stuff. And they would even, they would not even consider that there was a physical problem, the doctors. And well, that was until Silkworth came along and changed everything with his allergy obsession concept. And he discovered, I believe, the missing link to why people are alcoholic. this radical concept that the body was sick and not just the mind. That's what I mean. If people ask you, well, what got alcoholics and addicts out of the asylum? Well, the allergy obsession concept was one of the big ones because it just totally diffused something they've been trying to push for a long time. It was more, I think it was more of a lie that they pushed. But alcoholics also relate with the concept of the body. Um, you know, craving more once they start. And before Silkworth, there was other doctors that called it illness, and we mentioned Benjamin Rush before and a few others, but they couldn't explain why it was, what it was is what I want to say. They would say, yeah, there's a physical problem, but if you ask the guy what it was, they would, I don't know. Silkworth explained what it was. That's what's important. He explained this allergy, and Silkworth, it was only, I mean, what in the last 100 years that we even get to know what an alcoholic is. That's scary because for thousands of years there was no clue. No one had a clue. They were just, like I said, criminals. So they were treated as such. And we're so lucky this guy came along and basically, came along at the right time and also came in the path of Bill Wilson, and they crossed paths. Where would we be without that happening? There's a lot of magic that happens in I could call it the oasis of the program coming together. So tonight we're going to talk about the diagnosis, and the diagnosis is to determine and identify the nature of the cause of a problem, nature or cause of a problem. So let's go, we're going to start off by going to XXVI. XXVI. And we read this last week, and I'm going to read it again because it's going to tie into what we're covering today. I keep wanting to say tonight, but I know you guys are tonight. So I'm in the morning. So anyways, it says, it did not satisfy us to be told we could not control our drinking just because we're maladjusted to life. We're full far from reality, outright maladefectives. What he's saying there, did not satisfy us that we could not control our drinking just because it was a mental thing, is what they're saying. That's the old diagnosis right there. That they're crazy, they're full fight from reality, mental defectives, put them in a rubber room, lock the door, throw away the key, and just look the other way. So let's look at Silkworth's diagnosis now. And that's going to take us to XXVIII. Now, I always say there's this, I'll say a lot. I love this page and this page, and this page is right there with 55 as two of the most important pages in the book, and 65. But this is Silkworth's diagnosis. That was the old diagnosis. Here's Silkworth. It says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics. So chronic is reoccurring, persistent, ongoing, is a manifestation. Manifestation means sign that something is present or exists, or you could say it's real. Manifestation of an allergy. So an allergy is an abnormal reaction to a substance. When I heard alcoholics have an allergy, I always thought it sounds silly because I always tied an allergy to breaking out in a rash or something, or running, blowing your nose all the time, or seasonal allergies. But it's all it means is an abnormal reaction to a substance that leaves it pretty wide open. So that's a phenomenon of craving. So let's talk about this phenomenon of craving. A craving is a powerful, uncontrollable desire for more and more, right? Phenomenon is a situation or fact that cannot be explained, unexplainable. So phenomena of craving, this physical allergy, bodily different, that's the abnormal reaction to alcohol after the first drink, and where the person craves for more. And so I put this alcohol in my body, and more and more and more, right? It's back to the book. This all make more sense. The phenomenon of craving is limited in this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. So in page 21, we're not to go there now, page 21, he explains the moderate and hard drinker. We'll cover that. But the moderate and hard drinker, the normie, I guess you would call it, the temperance is when, these temperance drinkers when they drink, they get all they want. We don't get all we want because of this allergy. We want more. We crave more. So these guys, they get all they want after a few drinks. And, we have a physical reaction to alcohol coupled with an overwhelming desire to drink that makes us a real alcoholic and separates us from these other drinkers we talked about here. A good way to put it is we can't stop once we start. And when we are stopped, we can't stop from starting. We can't stop once we start. And when we are stopped, we can't stop from starting. That's a big difference between someone that can just, say, I'm going to drink 3 beers and put it down. That's a big difference. Now here's one of the only warnings that's in this, that's really that's throughout in this book, about the allergy. It says these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. It's a big thing right there. Once having formed the habit. Now, knowing the fact that you can never safely use alcohol in any form at all, did that ever stop you from drinking? These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. Once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it. Once having lost their self-confidence and their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them, and they become astonishingly difficult to solve. So in the last sentence there, notice the unmanageability at the end. Their problems pile up on them and they become astonishingly difficult to solve, not just for yourself, but everyone else. And no one can figure you out. And part of that is just because society has brainwashed so many people what an alcoholic is, weak-willed and sinful and all this stuff. And even the sufferer believes they're that. But the unmanageability, our problems pile up on them, on us, and we become astonishingly difficult to solve. All the problems at once, right? Jails, DUIs, these consequences, losing friends, family problems, breakups, rehab. But then there's also, it gets deeper. There is also the insanity of the obsession, the insanity of the first drink, the insanity that we cannot stop drinking. And then he mentioned that loss of self-confidence, being restless, irritable, discontent, living with resentment and fear. And you're conditioned to that's the only way. Human resources no longer work. Beyond human aid. We are astonishingly difficult to solve, hopeless, impossible to solve. Our life is kind of like this puzzle that's been scattered around the whole room. And we need something to help us put it back together again and identify the pieces. And that's the steps. I guess the big question is, how successful are you at managing your life, running your life, controlling your life? Some big questions. As long as you continue to experience this unmanageability, your mind will always seek out the ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. Now, do you have to be an alcoholic to be unmanageable? No. You could be one of those normie people and have all that stuff that's there. But there's a difference. Is their solution might be to run away or worse. Our solution is going to go have a drink. And their solution might go have a drink, but they can have one. We're off to the races. And the only way to overcome this unmanageability, because we don't want to be sitting at meetings with this unmanageability, it's horrible. And we see it all the time, is doing steps 4 through 9. And then commencing to living in steps 10, 11, 12. Living this way of life, enjoying this way of life, and watching the promises come true. About once having, he mentioned about once having formed a habit. That's an interesting concept because a habit is a reoccurring action, established custom. That's, something that's performed regularly, maybe even unconsciously, but there's a difference between a drinking habit and alcoholism or addiction, whatever you want to say. Alcoholism is mentally and physically dependent on alcohol due to mental obsession and physical allergy. A person with a drinking habit can stop for a strong reason. And when a drinking habit cannot be broken, it's an addiction. Habits can be broken on human power. Addiction cannot. So what he's saying here is we have an abnormal reaction to alcohol after the first drink, leading the craving for more. And we go on a spree or run. That is the bodily different part. That is the allergy. That's what Silkworth brought to us. Now, one thing I want to throw out there is, speaking of allergy, is my son, he has, he had a near-death allergic reaction to peanut butter at 2 years old. He's now 9 years old and still scared to death of peanut butter. He won't even get near it. He gets mad if we buy something with it, peanuts in it. That is a logical conclusion because he almost died. The memory is still there. The near-death experience is sufficient enough to him never want to get near it or eat it again or see it. He will never, eat peanut butter against his will, or call me at 3 a.m. in the morning, say he wants peanut butter. So why do we continue to use something that might kill us? I mean, we have an allergy. I mean, the phenomenon of craving can be a near-death experience for a lot of people, alcohol poisoning or overdoses, whatever. Why doesn't the memory of the sufficient enough to want to, to never want to drink again? Why don't we have that memory? Why don't we have just the thought of, man, this stuff gets me in trouble, all the unmanageability stuff, because we have an illness of the mind, that an obsession that says, despite your deep conviction, you never want to drink again, and knowing that what it does to you, you're going to do it anyway. We have a physical reaction coupled with a reoccurring persistent idea of drinking, and it doesn't respond to reason, called obsession. A mind that will condemn you to drink against your will, and a body that will condemn you to death, bodily and mentally different. That right there is what Silkworth brought to Towns Hospital, what made Charles B. Towns change his whole concept of the hospital he had and go with what Silkworth wanted to do. And thank God Bill crossed his path again. In our second study, I remember I covered some books, that early guys read in AA, and one of them was called The Medical Journeys of William Duncan Silkworth. And this was, you can find this one on silkworth.net. You can find all his medical journals on silkworth.net. This is part of one called Manifestation of an Allergy, and describes a person with the allergy, and it's very interesting. So this was written in 1933, before Bill even came along in his path. This is his description. He cannot take his liquor or leave it. He finds that he has to have a drink in the morning. Then he finds after a little more that his hands shake, and that he signs his name, like when he signs his name, for example. Later, irritability and lack of concentration supervene. He is not the man temporarily he used to be. In order to meet these changes, increasing symptoms, he is compelled to increase the amount he consumes, and prolonged spree replaces with a short intoxication. The phenomenon of craving is prominent. There is complete loss of appetite, insomnia, dry skin, hypermotor activity. He has a feeling of anxiety which amounts to nameless terror. And this is the part that's pretty deep. He presents the picture of a man who just finished a marathon race, but must have more stimulation to start again at once. You've seen what a guy looks like when he finishes a marathon. They're saying that that's what we present that look, but we got to keep going. Really spot on. So back to the book, XXVIII, and it says, frosty emotional peel seldom suffices. That's a good tongue twister there. But so I mean, the peels part. I mean, our parents, probably told us to stop. Some of them, the doctors, perhaps, might tell you this is killing you. The girlfriend threatening to leave or leaving. The children screaming in your face, or even better, your own appeal not to drink today, one day at a time, because it might kill you. Obsession doesn't give a crap about that. That's why interventions, never worked for us. Not like with other people. Look what he says here. This is why. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. So because of the obsession, we cannot, don't drink no matter what. We need the steps, and that is the depth and weight, and that begins with the allergy obsession concept that we're going over today. And there's nothing, you know, else, to tell them. What else are you going to tell a person? Oh, you're just a bad drinker. You drink too much. People want to add so much and pea in the soup, so much of step one. Is you're not powerless over people, places, and things. You're powerless over alcohol. Period. Period. There's nothing else in step one. You're powerless because of allergy obsession. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in the power of goodness themselves if they are to recreate their lives. The steps are the roadmap to recreate our lives. If any feels that a psychiatrist directing, I'm sorry, if any feels that as a psychiatrist directing a hospital for alcoholics, we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us for a while on the firing line, see the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become part of their daily work. Wow. Even their sleeping moments. The most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. See what he's saying there? If you don't understand why Silkworth saying, if you don't understand these, almost like he's talking to their doctors. If you don't understand why I'm doing this, come and step in my shoes for a day and look at the 40 alcoholics that I've worked with. So we feel after many years of experience that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men, the altruistic movement that's growing up among us. That's a huge endorsement right there. You can feel his emotions when he talks about this AA, because nothing else has worked. Imagine just 40,000 alcohol. Imagine how many of those guys and he connected with, he formed a bond with, and he just watches them eat away and die. There's nothing he can do. Nothing worked except the steps. So it says, this is another paragraph. It's an awesome one. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Did any of us drink for any other reason? We like the effect. The sensation is so elusive that while we may admit it's injurious, that means causing damage or harm, that they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life is the only normal one. Now, there's a part in the book on page 151. We're going to hold this page you're on. We're going to do a cross reference. 151 describes this alcoholic life as your only normal one really well. So if we go to page 151, let's cross reference that really quick. And I believe it starts at the bottom of 151. We all know 151. All right. So 151. Now and then a serious drinker, that's the person with the allergy, being dry at the moment, that means away from drink. I don't miss it at all. I feel better. You hear people say that all the time, right? Work better, having a better time. As ex-problem drinkers, that's the ones looking at this guy who probably recovered alcoholics. We smile at such a sally. We know that our friend is like a little boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. We see that person. Oh, I'm doing great. I got a car and a boat, and my wife's back. How do you feel? He's like a little boy whistling in the dark, trying to keep up his spirits. Look at this. He fools himself inwardly. He would give anything to take half a dozen drinks and get away with them. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot picture life without alcohol. And this is the big one right here. Someday he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. We don't want to get there. Then he will know loneliness as few do. He will be the jumping off place. He will wish for the end. We will, many of us have been there. Many of us have been there. Let's go back to XXVII to that paragraph. So right where we left off at. To them, their alcoholic life is the only number one. They are restless, irritable, and discontent, unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort. So besides an allergy, obsession, alcoholic, they get a feeling of ease and comfort, and an illusion of in control. And when a non-alcoholic drinks, they get an out of control feeling, adverse reactions, lightheadedness, lethargic, is why they only stop at 1 or 2 drinks. They know their limit. And a hard drinker can go a little further. And this might be the daily drinker doesn't have the allergy, but after, they get the above symptoms, the nausea feeling, they don't like, so they stop. They don't like how they feel. And if they continue drinking, they get sick. So they stop based on their drinking history. They remember their limit. They can always, just take it or leave it alone. We cannot, because of the allergy. Says they are restless, irritable, and discontent unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks they see others taking with impunity. That means freedom from harm or punishment. After they have succumbed to the desire again, that's the obsession of the mind, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, craving for more. They pass to the well-known stages of a spree. A spree is a binge, as a result of phenomenal craving, the run, the spree, whatever. They pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging in most with a firm resolution not to drink again. So I'm going to put up a little slide here. And this is one of the easiest ways to explain this. So I'm going to tell a little bit of my story here, in a sense. So I get out of jail, and I have a desire to drink. And so what do? I'm an alcoholic, right? So I'm gonna take action, and I'm gonna have a drink. The phenomenon of craving develops, and I go on a spree. So drink, obsession, drinks, obsession, actions, drinks, phenomenon of craving develops, and go on a spree. And what happens with me is I make a firm resolution not to drink again in the back of a cop car, let's say, or something like that. I make a firm resolution. I'm not going to do this anymore. I got to stop. So I decide to go to AA, maybe NA, maybe church, but I'm only going to do that stuff. I'm only going to do some type of institution, and just meetings. That's all I'm going to do. But there's a problem, right? The problem is this: I'm restless, irritable, and discontent. So that's high anxiety, easily pissed off, and not satisfied, all wrapped together in one beautiful ball. And that's how a person's mindset is. We mentioned unmanageability. That's a form of it in between drink, when we're dry in recovery, without the steps. How many people are restless, irritable, and discontent? You see, they get easily pissed off. They're nervous, and they're not satisfied. They're not satisfied. I think is a big part. And so what happened to me? I'm sitting there restless, irritable, and discontent. And most importantly, I still have a desire to drink. So my mind is just, I'm getting blinded by both things at the same time, and sitting there going, I feel great, And what's going to happen? I succumb to desire again, obsession, spree. Maybe I stop again. But what usually happens is this for the real alcoholic: the endless cycle. Desire to drink, phenomenal craving develops, and it goes on a run. And sometimes it goes on for years. I don't know how many guys I've known that put themselves through this over and over again. It's not their fault, but like I have guys that they'll come in, they'll stop, they're dry, they're not ready. They come back again, they're not ready, and then they come back 10 years later and they're like, I'm ready. And then they never left this. They never. Endless cycle. That's what we're looking at in this paragraph, is that the restless, irritable, discontent is a deep place to be. That fear and anxiety, and not satisfied, easily mad, nothing's going my way, I'm a victim, blinded, it builds and builds until we need that ease and comfort. Let's go back to the book. It says, this is repeated over and over again, unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of recovery. So a psychic change is definitely a word we don't use. It's not used every day. You don't hear it, it's not a word, except for us in recovery, we hear mentioned. You're not gonna hear some normal person mentioned in the grocery store probably, but at times we need a change in our thinking. Psychic means mind. So a mind change, a change of our thinking. Now, to have a psychic change, maybe I can go to church and have that happen. Maybe I can meet the girl that or a guy that understands, or I get married or a new job, something new. But they're not telling us to have a psychic change here. They're telling us to have an entire psychic change. Entire means complete or whole. A complete, entire, let's just go with the word complete. Complete psychic change. A complete psychic change is not it's not easy to achieve because it means radical changes to our thinking and belief system. A belief system that we've had our entire life, that's centered on fear, anger, and guilt, and driven by things like high and low self-esteem and pride, and driven by those things, and security, material, money. And what happens is when this radical psychic change, a complete psychic change occurs, our thinking changes. When our thinking changes, our beliefs change. When our beliefs change, our desires change. When our desires change, the desire to drink miraculously disappears. The radical change in thinking and beliefs shifts our desires. In other words, obsession's gone. The only avenue that there is out there that I could tell you about, I mean, if someone else has a better one, let me know, but that can produce an entire psychic change is the steps, particularly steps 4 through 9 in 10 of 12. So just to clarify, psychic change is the same as spiritual conversion. The psychic change is so it's not just a medical term, it's a spiritual term, and it's also it's described very well on page 27, the psychic change. So if you go to 27, in the middle of that page, they're going to describe the psychic change. And this is Carl Jung describing to Roland Hazard about the spiritual conversion, where it says in the middle of the page, they appear to be in the nature of huge, that's a big word to throw in there, huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Again, what else can produce huge emotional displacements and rearrangements other than the steps? Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which are once the guiding force of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to the side. What else can cast to the side emotions, ideas, emotions, and attitudes other than the steps? And a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. What else can give us new conceptions and motives to dominate us other than the steps? This is telling it, it's telling us that, the steps are not about gaining anything. They're about losing stuff. They're about so I can be closer to whatever's inside of me, call it God, whatever. So how does one, receive this entire psychic change? Again, 4 through 9, 10, 11, 12. It's a continuous, 10, 11, 12 is a continuous nurturing of the psychic change the rest of our lives. Back to XXIX. So here's Silkworth going a little deeper on the psychic change. It says, on the other hand, and strange as this may seem, to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired to ever solving, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only effort necessary is required to follow a few simple rules. Again, continue making your old amends, 9, 10, 11, 12. All of a sudden you do 4 through 9 and you're able to control your desire, well, because it's not there anymore. which is a miracle. Look what else it says. It says, men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal. Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me. That's what he heard all the time. That's what he heard all the time, every day. But he didn't know how to help them other than telling them what they had. Faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, there's a condition. He must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Although he gives all that is in him, it often is not enough. One feels that something more than human power, this is a doctor talking, human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Though the aggregate, which means control of many, of recoveries resulting from psychic effort is considerable. We physicians must admit we made little impression upon the problem as a whole. Many types do not respond to ordinary psychic approach. One thing I want to point out, when he's saying we physicians must admit we made little impression, the scary thing is he's 100% right. And the only people they went to for advice on alcohol, like, the rules and how we regulate it, were doctors who couldn't do anything except say lock them up. He's saying, what he's saying here also is that men and women who cried out, for his help, everything they tried, nothing worked, and most of them do not respond to the psychological stuff. That is another endorsement, because he's saying they need something more. Hey, there's these steps over here. He says, I do not hold those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. I have had many men who had, for example, worked for a period of months on some problem or business deal, which was to be settled on a certain date favorably to them. They took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all other interests. Wow. We've been there. So that the important appointment was not met. Well, of course it's not met. It's paramount. It's the highest, Paramount's the highest peak of all mountains. So you could have this job interview lined up. You could go, to find out about the inheritance you're getting or whatever it is, the biggest moment in your life, graduating from somewhere, and all of a sudden, you've been dry for 2 months, let's just say, and you have a drink, and you're not going to make it because the drinking is paramount. These men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. Been there. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. The supreme sacrifice is suicide. And, not many alcoholics I met who haven't it crossed their mind. I've been sober for 21 years, and I've known over a dozen people that committed suicide, not when drinking, when sober. Alcoholics don't commit suicide. And Bill mentions that in Bill's story. I mean, he lost everything, and everyone was jumping out of buildings. He didn't jump, he got drunk. There's people I know in the fellowship that were stone cold dry, not doing the steps, that eventually couldn't. They were stuck in that restless, irritable, and discontent I was talking about. And they have done it for so long that they know their prognosis, the diagnosis. They know their diagnosis, that they have an allergy obsession. And I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And there's also the unmanageability of the consequences that they can't face again. So the classification of alcoholics who seem most difficult in much detail is outside the scope of this book. There are, of course, of those, the psychopaths who are emotionally unstable. We don't know any of them, right? We are all familiar with this type. They are always going on the wagons for keeps. They are over remorseful and make many resolutions, but never a decision. Hmm. The psychopath refers to a person suffering from a, unpredictable, aggressive, it's a violent behavior. They set restless, irritable, and discontent. You know, they show little, to no empathy or remorse for their actions. They have trouble interacting with people, their social instinct, living a normal life. They have negative feelings of self-doubt, depression. It comes from psychopath comes from the Greek word, which means uh, psyche, mind, and also pathos, suffering. Um, Again, those who do not recover, you know, he goes, um, those who have, he mentions how it works. Those of us have grave emotional mental disorders can recover for the capacity to be honest. You know, there's a type of man unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. He finds various ways of drinking. He changes his brand or his environment. This is called denial, which we hear a lot about. It's just a refusal to believe or accept the truth. Not ready yet. Fooling ourselves about the reality of the situation. You know, running away from it. You know, Now, denial has different forms. I mean, there's denial that we have the drinking problem early on when friends and family tell us, and there's the denial that runs way deeper than that. That is the denial that we have an allergy. Um, I mean, I go to rehab and I go to meetings, but I sit down with a sponsor and he tells me you have an allergy obsession of alcohol. And I'm like, no chance, man. What are you talking about? No way. I'm not that. I'm not. They might say that to your face. So, I tried different ways to beat it. Like I mentioned earlier, the right church, the right meeting. I'm going to show these guys I'm not as sick as they are. In a few years, after being, chewed up and spit out a few times, I'm going to have a new sponsor. I'm going to look in the eyes and I'm going to tell them, yeah, I have the allergy and I have the obsession and it's whooping my ass. I'm defeated. I'm ready to do these steps. Let's do it. And they'll do it. There's a type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger. This is the type of person who thinks they can do this without the steps again. So they don't learn, since they don't want to do the steps, they never learned about the allergy or the obsession. And after a bit of dry time, someone offers them a glass of, oh, I can have that. I've been clean, sober for 10 years. There's the manic depressive type, who is perhaps the least understood by his family and friends, whom a whole chapter can be written. This is a deep one here because, that manic depressive is now called bipolar, and bipolar means, two. So bipolar means two opposite poles, a person with a low mood and high moods, high and low self-esteem going back and forth. Emotions go up and down, manic depressive. What is that? What does and how it works, again, what it says. Those who suffer grave emotional mental disorders, they can recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Anyone, I mean, I was told, and I'm not giving my medical stamp of approval, but I was told by years, first I was told manic depressive, then bipolar. Um, and I did the steps and I don't feel as crazy as I used to be. you know, it's not there anymore. And I've seen it happen with other people too, get off their meds and be normal again. Then there are the types entirely normal in every respect, except in the effect alcohol has on them. They are able, intelligent, friendly people. You know, those are the people that just have the allergy and they like, whoa, this guy. All these and many others have one symptom in common, just one. He's keeping it simple here. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. So all those are the same. Every person we mention is the same. It doesn't matter if this person is how crazy they are, if they have bipolar, if they're if they're up and down, if they're all over the meeting and move around, and they have one thing in common. They're all the same, phenomenon craving. This phenomenon is, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy, which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment with we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we suggest is entire abstinence. That is the solution that Silkworth offered. Abstinence, no recovery plan, 2% recovery rate. The only relief he suggested he could tell him was abstinence. I mean, I don't know. I mean, imagine how he felt. You know, I got to be doing something more. This immediate precipitates us into seething cauldron of debate. You know, so we did our diagnosis, allergy. What is the prognosis? And a prognosis is it's a doctor's estimation of the course that a disease or illness is taking, progressive, right? What's, you know, and what it is likely to overcome it. You know, will you recover? So prognoses are based on statistics a lot. So let's look at his statistics again. He worked with 40,000 alcoholics with a 2% recovery rate. That's his stats. So here's his prognosis based on his own statistics. Much has been written, pro and con, but among his physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. So again, his diagnosis, allergy obsession, his prognosis, you're doomed. And, you know, and doom means condemned. You know, if a building's doomed, it's condemned to be knocked over. It's not going to last. Or for a human, condemned would mean death or ruin. You know, it's a harsh word. And how would you feel if you went to a doctor and they tell you you're doomed? Maybe that's happened to some of us. So look what he says next. What is the solution? Great question after that. You know, after being told you're doomed. Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought into to be treated for chronic alcoholism. So he has the allergy. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be in a case of pathological mental deterioration. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed for him there was no hope. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name, partially recognized him, but all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I believe he's talking about Hank Parkhurst there, because Hank Parkhurst was sent to towns. And Hank Parkhurst was a really tough guy to deal with. And all of a sudden, you know, I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left. A long time has passed with no return to alcohol. I believe Parkhurst did drink again, though. But the point of it is this guy shows up and he's not the same person he once was after, you know, a year or more during the steps. Crazy. When I need a mental uplift, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. The patient had made his own diagnosis, and we do that, and deciding his situation was hopeless, had hidden in a deserted barn, determined to die. He was rescued by a search party in desperate condition brought to me. Following his physical rehabilitation, his detox, he had a talk with me, in which he frankly stated he thought treatment was a waste of effort. How many times have you gone through treatment and realized after the third or fourth it's just a waste of effort? And look what he says, unless I could assure him, which no one ever had, that in the future he would have the willpower to resist the impulse to drink. What he's saying, what he told him was, you know what? I understand you've been here a bunch of times, but now I got an answer for you. Think of how great he felt when Bill went through there, and he knows Bill's coming there at 2 o'clock, and this guy's come through there 5 or 6 times before. I got a guy to talk to you. Forget me, talk to this guy. His alcoholic problem was so complex, his desperation so great, that he felt his only hope would be through what then called moral psychology. We doubted it even would have effect. However, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. Now and then, he is as fine specimen. I see him now and then, and he's as fine specimen of manhood as one would wish to meet. I see that all the time. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book, and though perhaps he may scoff, he may remain to pray. William Duncan Silkworth. So the diagnosis, again, is allergy obsession. Try to hammer it home as much as possible. And the prognosis, we're doomed. Our chance of recovery is the steps we can give us that entire psychic change. Entire is the main word. So just to reiterate, I mean, powerlessness, what does it look like? It looks like this, is, I do what might, kill me against my will, and I'm condemned to death once I start. I can't stop. Takes away any reason and choice. Powerlessness convinces me that I'm beyond human aid. What does that look like? What does human aid look like? Beyond it. I'm living in this hell one day to the next because my human power isn't there. It can't help me. And being convinced, once I'm convinced no human power is there, that's why I see I'm hopeless. What does that look like? Hopeless. I feel utterly without hope to beat this. The door is locked, the key is thrown away. I don't know what to do. There's one way to escape, being hopeless, and that is admit defeat. Admitting defeat. I'm broken. I cannot put myself back together again. It just paves the way of reconstruction, meaning even though I am defeated, I am convinced I need power. New life arises from that. Only a real alcoholic knows what it's like to be defeated by alcohol. You have to have the allergy. And only a real alcoholic knows what it's like to reach within from the bottom of their soul and find the strength to seek that power. And how many times, have we thought, if only, I could have stopped, if only I could have control, if only I could, drink normally, maybe, and that's where at some point we let go of if only, and took a look, deep within the darkness of this abyss that we never want to look at, into our innermost self, and said, I'm powerless. In the end, the end justifies the means. So next week we're going to talk about, we'll be going into Bill's story.